push it. That's the same. Be careful. Be careful with that.
We'll get started. Try to be where everybody's. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Susan Mancuso. I'm the Director of School Counseling. We have a few of our counselors here tonight. We have Mr. Fitzgerald and Mrs. Carney also in the audience somewhere. Yeah, please feel free to help yourself. There's always seats in the front row, but you're welcome to sit up top as well. So thank you for all coming tonight on this rainy Thursday evening. I'm really excited you're all here. We used to have the college admissions panels pre-COVID, and then COVID hit, and then everybody kind of slid a little bit, so we're trying to get back into this because we think it's really beneficial for families to hear straight from the colleges themselves with really helpful information. So this is something we're hoping to do every other year as we're inviting sophomore and junior families to attend. And for anyone, if you have friends or family who couldn't make it tonight, we are recording this by ECAT, so it will be available later on the ECAT website if anyone's interested. Okay, so let me. Let's take down. Okay. Just want to introduce our panelists this evening. I did it alphabetical order by college. So, Todd Ayatis. There we go. Associate Dean of Admission and Community Outreach at Bridgewater State University. We have Michelle Feliziola, Senior Assistant Director of Admission and Multicultural Recruitment from Bryant University. Charlene Alexander Joseph, Senior Admissions Counselor from Massasoit Community College. Tim Reardon, Vice President for Enrollment at New England Institute of Technology. Sarah Thomashower, Associate Dean of Admissions from Stonehill College. And Janella Palo, Assistant Director of Admissions from UMass Amherst. So we wanted to bring these folks here tonight for you guys because it's a great variety of options here. And I think that's what we're always trying to impress upon students is that there's a lot of options out there. Whether you're looking at a 2-year school, a technical school, a 4-year college, a private college, a public institution, whether it's the UMass system or the state university system, public versus private, religious versus non-religious. There's a wide range of options here. So we're going to kick it off. I have a series of questions we'll ask the panelists. The panelists will also have their points to add, and then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. Okay? So first things first, I do want to kick it off with just a general question, especially for juniors and seniors, sophomores and juniors, as you're starting to prepare for this process. The big thing we always encourage kids to do initially, was doing the research, but then taking the college tour. And what a really, we try to impress upon everyone that the college tour is important, but I want to get feedback from you folks about the college tour and anything you recommend that students do while they're on campus. I think so.
Hi. So I think it's very important for you guys, actually I know it's very important for you guys to come and take a campus tour just because there are huge differences between a private and a public, a larger institution, smaller institution. UMass Amherst is around 30,000 undergraduate students, which is, pretty large, and it's not for everybody, and that is okay. When you're on tour, I highly encourage that you schedule a tour when students are on campus, that way you can see how student life is run, how busy it is, just kind of the everyday, today life for students.
I would just add that as someone who's in the business, I can tell you, we all put pictures of our most beautiful buildings and shiny, happy people on our websites and our brochures, right? And so we can all start to look the same online or on paper. And getting out to see the campuses is probably one of the most important things you can do, even at the early stages. Because in addition to being an associate dean, I'm also dad of 3 kids. I call them kids, of course, too, but I'm currently in college. But, they come to this with preconceived notions of what's right for them and what isn't, when in fact they've had limited exposure to the options. And so there's nothing like getting out there and seeing campuses, even encouraging your students to step out of their comfort zone, right? Because they may think, well, I don't want to go to school in the city. Until they go to a city and they see a school and think, yeah, this isn't so bad. Literally, a conversation I had with my daughter 2 weeks ago when we were in Boston. And so, they start to get a sense of what they like, what they don't like. They may surprise themselves. They can keep a checklist of things, and it starts to whittle down that universe of possibilities of 3,000 four-year colleges and universities in this country down to something that makes more sense, right? And go to a one-way school. Get a sense of what does a 6-hour car ride feel like when you have to go back and forth in a day or stay in a hotel, right? And that gives you a sense of scale and makes it more tangible for people, and absolutely do not pay a deposit on a college until you visit it, okay? I always equate this to buying a car. You wouldn't buy a car without taking it out for a test drive and kicking the tires. You're going to spend a lot more on your students' education than you will their first half dozen or so automobiles, right? So get out there and kick the tires and get a feel for it. Absolutely during the school year, when you go to a campus, it's getting past the facts and figures. It's getting a feel for the place, and you do that best when students are there and the place is in full swing. And look around, not just the physical plant, right? But get a sense of the people. Are they happy to be there? Are they miserable, like super competitive, intense? I went to 2, who remain unnamed, liberal arts colleges with my younger son during his college search. 2 campuses in the same day. One, lovely, warm, welcoming, felt fantastic, absolutely, was an accurate portrayal based on what we had seen up to the point. The next campus, in the first 15 minutes, we were like, oh, we need to leave here. This is not the right place. Right, we stayed, of course, because I'm in the business again. I'm not leaving. It's rude, but we definitely it went from top 3 to we're not applying. So you don't know until you go. So do yourself a favor, even early. Sophomore year is not too soon to get out there. And as I said, start illuminating areas.
Something that's really important to keep in mind is that yes, we would love for you to visit our physical campuses and sign up for a tour and engage with our staff. Give parents an opportunity to embarrass their kids with their questions. It happens to everybody, the only one. But we also understand that not everyone has Saturdays free. You can't just take off a random Tuesday to come visit us when most of our tours are available during the week. So most of our institutions are going to offer some type of online engagement, some type of opportunity to tour the campus through a virtual system or speak with a counselor or a current student over a Zoom or a meeting of some sort. So if your schedule doesn't allow for a plethora of visits, aside from when we're coming down to the wire in that senior year, know that there are options for you and that counts. A term you're going to begin to hear throughout this process is called demonstrated interest. Some schools count demonstrated interest in the review process, some schools don't. It's a great question to ask during a visit or a chat with a counselor. But all of those interactions, whether virtual or in person, count towards demonstrated interest because it means you're raising your hand and saying, I am expressing interest in this institution and I would like to learn a little bit more about it. Something with the visit too, come prepared. We mean prepared in a variety of ways. Check the weather, right? No one wants to go on tour on a day like today without knowing that it's going to be pouring rain at your visit. If you're visiting a school that's out of the same climate you're used to, check what the weather is because how comfortable you are on tour is going to play a really big impact on your overall experience. Also, your tour guides are going to be lovely. They are trained for that. Ask people you see in the hallway, hey, what year are you? What's your major? What made you pick this school? Chat with people outside of the admissions office because if you like those interactions, they're probably going to be the most accurate portrayal of who the people you're going to meet during your 4 years there are. Our tour guides are typically some of the most friendly people we have at our institution. That's why they raise their hand and say they want to become tour guides. But sometimes those interactions with people outside of that program can really leave a lasting impact.
I just want to add one last thing, or in addition to what's been said, to not just visit the school, but there's an opportunity at our school at Bryan, students can come and shadow one of our student ambassadors. So you spend the day there, you can sit in on a class, and we try to pair you, we'll put you into a class that has an interest similar to an interest that you may be into, and you get to have lunch in the dining hall with that student. So again, just another opportunity to see and test it out before you make that commitment.
Good evening, good people. So at Massasoit Community College, we have 3 campuses. So we have one in Brockton, one in Canton, and one in Middleborough. Middleborough focuses solely on our EMT and paramedic preparation. Canton has veterinary technicians, diesel engine technicians, dental assistants, and medical assistant labs there. And our Brockton campus holds our allied health and nursing, business, science, biology. So I say this using Massasoit as an example, but no matter what school you're going to, if you already have an idea of your focus, your degree, what you want to settle on or work on, it's important to make sure you're mentioning that to the admissions counselors and the tour guides so that you're getting a sense of what that major or degree looks like. I also think it's really important that if you have any accessibility needs, maybe you were on an IEP or 504 while you were in public school, you hear about tuition and fees. Parents out there and other good guardians, and fees, meaning all the tutoring, library support, accessibility and disability supports as well. So I would ask those questions because you're paying for it regardless.
And just to piggyback off of that, I know we have a lot of families with students who have IEPs or 504s, and we usually explain that a lot of times some of those supports can be carried over to the college level. Can any of you speak to that a little bit more in depth about some of the services that are available to students?
So I'll just speak on behalf of Stonehill and then just give some general advice with that. At Stonehill, we do offer academic accommodations and accommodations for other needs. They are demonstrated through that documentation that you presented to your high school, sort of in a similar fashion, and then between the Office of Accessibility and the family, a plan is created to support the student. One of the key differences in the accessibility programs at the college level is the approach to what the accommodations are going to allow for. So in a high school, at the high school K-12 level, there's a different goal, which is an equal access to doing well, right? Equal access to getting a high grade. At the college level, academic services is typically designed to give equal access to the material. And so it's on the student to seek out any additional tutoring, any additional support. And this is going to vary from school to school in terms of what they can offer. At Stonehill, we do offer a wide array of academic supports that are available, extra time, use of a calculator, verbal testing instead of standard testing, a variety of different things. That is dependent upon what the student needs. But every school is going to be very different, so if this is something that is going to be a part of your college search, it's really important, as mentioned before, to bring this up during your tour and see if you can schedule an appointment with the Office of Accessibility potentially over the summer prior to enrollment or even prior to application to get a sense of what that school offers and when that process begins. Because at every school it's slightly different. Some schools do offer very robust programs that students can apply for or can pay an additional fee to be a part of, and other schools do not. So this is one of those situations that's very specific to each institution, and a good practice to just add it to that permanent list of standard questions when you visit tours or speak with any admissions professionals.
Ditto.
I would just add from my own personal experience, having been on an IEP when I was in high school and having dyslexia, I know that there is a reluctance on the part of some students making that transition from high school going on to college. I don't want the stigma or the label or what have you. They might not want it to disclose. My advice as an admission professional would be disclose during the application process. It's illegal to discriminate against you based on a learning disability or any disability for that matter. And the nature of the work from high school to college is different. As Sarah just said, the onus of responsibility is on you for your learning. You spend less time in class, and it's about getting access to the material and not necessarily equal access to full success. You have to own that aspect of your college experience more so than perhaps other students. And so if you disclose during the admissions process, then we can, and you're admitted and you enroll, there's a seamless transition then to support services. In many cases, in Bridgewater, there's a separate open house for students. You get connected to counselors that much sooner. You become more aware of the services because it's a wonderful thing if you have developed skills to be successful in college and in high school. But those same skills may need to be refined or augmented once you make the transition to college. You want to make sure that the supports are in place, right? Because if you're struggling and then you're anxious and then you're trying to figure this stuff out, it makes it that much more difficult. So set yourself up for success. Disclose during the admission process, and as Sarah said, connect with those resources as quickly as possible before enrolling, if not immediately after, so that you get everything you need for when you need it.
Sorry. So the only thing I would add here is there's a huge transition from students from high school to college. Moms, dads, parents, guardians, you have been their shepherds over the last 17, 18, 19 years, helping them through this process, especially for students who have an IEP or a 504 or learning differences. And once they get to college, we're not going to talk to you. So I know that that's a shock, but I say it, and I every year we have welcome our students. I am the lucky person who gets to stand in front of them and say, moms and dads, it's been nice talking to you for the past 10 months. I'm no longer talking to you. What do you mean? And so FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974, states that once your student starts college, we communicate with them and them only, unless they give us access to speak with you about academic records, about billing. How many kids? Every kid will tell us we can talk to their mom about their bill, but not about their grades. So what I see, and New England Tech is on a quarter-based system, so this just happened to us as we got to the end of our spring term 2 weeks ago, is all of a sudden we got flooded with accommodation requests at the end, at literally the 10th week of the term, because now all of a sudden students are saying, well, yeah, but I used to get extra time, or I used to have somebody help me, or I used to be able to sit in the front of the classroom, and it's on the student. And so we're getting requests from the student, but I'm telling you, we're getting more requests from the parents saying, why didn't you do this? And I'm like, ma'am, I don't know who you're talking about. And I don't like having those conversations. So if you are that student, and I know this is tough, and I know it's tough to be the student, to raise your hand, but it just as it's been said, have the conversation during the admissions process, meet the people with whom you would have those conversations. If you choose to use services, great. If you choose not to use services, great. It's your choice, all right? But you're going to navigate this as a student, and obviously, depending on the support of your parents. But again, mom and dad can't call and have that conversation with your college professor like they can with your high school.
Todd, you had mentioned that, I heard you say a phrase earlier, setting them up for success. Can you speak to what sophomores right now can do to prepare and get ready for college? I'm asking the whole panel, but what you think would be really helpful for our sophomores to hear right now?
Todd and I just talked about this a couple weeks ago, so it's very fresh in our memory. I think as sophomores right now, you're in a great opportunity, right? You've gotten a taste of high school. You're sort of in this nice sandwich place. You have a little bit of time before the reality of the college search process becomes a larger part of your school life and your personal life. This is a really great opportunity to start working on the skills that we would expect a college student to have coming in, and we'd expect to see during your college search process. And what I mean by that is being willing to speak up and ask questions, registering for your own tour, managing your email and making sure that you are opening important emails and managing that process. I have met some wonderful moms and dads through the 8 years that I've done this. You guys are great. Overall, had wonderful experiences. I wish that I got to meet your students more, but a lot of them just kind of stand quietly behind you because they're afraid to talk to me, or they're afraid to ask a question. So 10th grade, I think, is a really great time, and honestly, it's never too early, but 10th grade, I think, is a really great time to start pushing your kid to the front of that conversation and saying, I'm going to support you through this process, and I'm going to help you gain the skills to write a professional email and set up a college email account and things like that, and get your voicemail ready. But this is on you. If you want to take a tour next Saturday, great. Go sign up for it. I'm not going to sign you up for it. If you don't sign up for it, then we'll have to reschedule a different day. Because at the college level, as we mentioned, it's solely on them. Mom and dad can't do anything for the student on behalf of them. So I always think that 10th grade is a really great opportunity for students to get sort of the torch passed to them to manage that process. There will be trial and error. I remember my own process, lots of trial and error. But I appreciated the fact that when I said to my parents, I only want to go to college 4 hours away or more, they said, great, then you're going to drive there every time. We're not driving you there. We're going to sit in the passenger seat and be passenger princesses, and you're going to navigate us there. So that way I got to really understand what it meant to have to drive 4 hours back and forth, and really live on that Mass Pike. So for those of you who are beginning this college search and your kids are saying, I want to go to school in California or Indiana or Miami, great. You book the plane flights. You book the hotel. You find out how much the rental car is and all of those other elements, because that's going to be the reality that they're going to face when they are going back and forth to college. It also is a great time to start setting realistic expectations. If flying to Florida for college is something that your student really wants, but you are thinking as a parent, there's no way that we can make that work, have that conversation early. Have the conversations about who is paying for college, how are we going to be supporting our child, what is the expectation on either side. Am I living at college, right? Is the plan that the student's going to live at college, or are you planning that your student's going to commute? Have those conversations early so they can begin their college search with everyone being, at least for the most part, on the same page about what type of institution you're looking for. I am an only child. My parents had one shot at this. The one thing we didn't do amongst 3 million conversations was talk about distance, and I was planning to fly to college. And at the very end of the process, I got a fun dose of humbling and was told, that's off the table. You can only consider the schools that you were accepted to within driving distance. That hurt. Kind of made my heart break a little. This process can be really fun. Let's remove the opportunity for those types of conversations and have them on the front end. So, set up a college email account, register for your own tours, have honest and open conversations. The last thing I will say on what to do in 10th grade is consider who are the stakeholders in this process and really consider who needs to be included. Typically that means your parents, the student, and the guidance counselors. You'll notice I didn't mention your entire family giving you college advice on that list. We give you permission to not talk about college at every Thanksgiving for the rest of your high school experience. We give you permission to not share where you're visiting colleges and not turn this into a competition or really having comparison become the overarching theme of this entire search. You are allowed to keep this process private. No one needs to know your list. I think Oliver Ames is a fantastic high school. There sometimes can be a little bit of competition considering the area that we're in with so many fabulous colleges. You are allowed to not list where you're visiting for your own mental health. I highly encourage it. So as 10th graders and even 11th graders, think about the things that you're doing now that maybe you're doing because other people are, and think about what's going to be best for you during this process.
I love that advice, Sarah. I enjoy every time I hear you say it. And Sarah touched upon what I would call the third rail of college search, and that's money. I'm gonna hop up and down on that third rail for a moment. I would absolutely encourage students to have a candid conversation with your family now about what you guys can reasonably afford. And by reasonably afford, excuse me, I mean what the family saves, what you can cash flow. But more importantly, what are you all comfortable in taking on student loan debt, right? Because they cap how much a student can take out federal student loans. They let you run wild, Parent Plus and private loans. And as a parent with 2 kids in college right now, I can tell you it's a challenge for even the most well-heeled of us. Not that I consider myself in that category, but it takes planning and it sets expectations. And so, my advice is have that candid conversation, but at the same time, I encourage students and families, don't get scared by the sticker price. And I said it. If you watch the news today, you know several schools in this area just went north of $90,000 a year, right? But I'm going to let you know a trade secret. Almost nobody pays the sticker price. And if you apply for federal financial aid, then you won't pay the sticker price because you at least have access to subsidized loans, right? So, don't get scared by the sticker price. See where you get in, and then see what you get for financial aid. So I encourage you, don't cut student conversation short at this stage of the game in terms of price, right? Figure out some of those other variables, come up with a number, see where you get in, and then come back to that number you guys talked about early on the stage now. Because again, this is, when it comes to college choice, like when you're in the driver's seat, you're deciding where among all the options the student's going to go, that is not a rational process. It's not. It's an emotional process. Okay? And I'm not saying coming up with a number now and sticking to it eliminates all the tears. It'll minimize it a little bit, right? You know? At least it tethers it back to something based in reality, so that you're making the right decisions for the students and for your family, because it is absolutely a family financial decision in almost every case. So, you know, play Powerball and then have a candid conversation.
I think it's important to note too, from the community college perspective, we're about $7,100 a year. And I like to put that number out there, not just because it is a more modest price for families to consider, but Massasoit offers 60+ degrees and certificates. And a significant amount of them are eligible for the mass transfer program from the state. And so my amazing colleagues representing Bridgewater State and representing UMass Amherst, a lot of our students will get their associate degree in 2 years for about $15K, and then transfer into a four-year institution. So there are options and possibilities to consider if budget is on the top of mind. I would advise sophomores specifically. This does not mean go out today and find what I'm about to say. But people love students to call and shadow or call and ask for informational interviews. If you're interested in a specific field and you're curious about how that works, this summer is a good opportunity to call, email, and ask, hey, can I come shadow for a day? Can I come volunteer for a day? It's gonna look great on your college applications no matter where you want to go, but more importantly, it's gonna help you start thinking about, what do I wanna do professionally? And after that job shadow, was I like, no, I'm crazy, that is not for me, or you're double down and you're really excited about it. So sophomore summer is a great opportunity to do that. Professionals love talking about themselves. They will take that virtual Zoom call and do the informational interview. You can ask them how they started in their career, what was the path, but also even more so, you can ask to come visit and shadow. So those are the two things I would tell sophomores and families to consider.
Just to go off of that, I think at any point in high school, especially in the college search, I think there's a lot of students who come to speak with many of us at college fairs and say, I want pre-med, I want pre-law. But they don't have a firm understanding of what that really means or how long they'll be in school for, specifically with pre-med. And I am happy to break down the 45 years of schooling they're looking at, but you know, I don't love breaking their heart either. Asking the professionals that you have in your life, whether it's you go for your physical and you have a minute to ask your doctor or the nurse that's checking you in, or the family friend that started their own business, whoever it is in your life that you're like, oh, that job looks kind of interesting. I kind of wonder how they got there. Ask them. Like mentioned, they love talking about themselves. They'll be happy to do that. You also may find that that person didn't have a linear path to their job. They kind of had some zigzags, some experiences. Many of us are not in the same job that we started at when we graduated college or graduated high school. There's a lot of steps along the way that lead us to where we are now. I always say my boss's favorite job he ever had was selling shoes. Taught him the most skills he ever needed to work in admissions. So ask those interesting questions to people who might be inspiring to you. You may also find that a four-year degree isn't going to be the right fit. If that's the field you're going into, maybe it's going to be a technical school, maybe it's going to be a two-year community college, maybe it's going to be an apprenticeship. There are a lot of different avenues besides four-year college, and I say that as a four-year college counselor. So the more research you do in high school to find out what paths are available to you and what industries are of interest, you may be able to save yourself time and money by going into that initial field in a more direct way and choosing a different path than maybe what other peers are doing.
Having shared all that information, is there anything you want to add for juniors in terms of anything they should be doing to prepare? Is there anything else? Kind of hit the high points, but.
I guess double down on that job shadowing. I think it's more significant your junior year, not just for the college applications, but even more emphasis on the professional path that you might take. I think is significant. I would emphasize again the mass transfer program that I talked about. What that means is if a student attends one of the 15 amazing community colleges that we have across the state, albeit Massasoit is in the top tier, it's important to note that if a student earns a 2.5 GPA or higher in Bridgewater State and UMass Amherst, correct me if I'm wrong, they're guaranteed admission. And the process is significantly easier to transfer. So if you haven't had an opportunity to do the research during sophomore year, it's even more critical junior year. I would also bring up the elephant in the room around GPA and academics as well. That is important to institutions. For Massasoit Community College, if a student is coming in with a 2.7 or below, we are going to ask you to do some placement testing. We want to make sure that you're not wasting your time or your money. We're going to do an assessment called Action Placer. You cannot fail it or pass it. It's just to help us better understand where you are with your reading, writing, and math. And so GPA does matter for the sense of helping not just the admissions team, but the registrar and other folks after. We're going to help you with your courses and setting up your courses and making sure we're setting you up for success.
Following up, talking about, thank you, Charmaine, that's really helpful, I think, for families to really understand the value and the importance of two-year colleges and the benefits that can come from that. Tim, I wanted to ask you, can you talk to really the importance and value of technical schools and why they're so important all the time, but especially today with the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to echo, you're getting to the end of your high school career, and so much emphasis has been put on college. And, I grew up with a brother. He was not college bound and has done very well. He went to a vocational high school, did not go to college, and has done very well for himself. And I think a lot of emphasis is put on college because it is a great opportunity for students to change the trajectory of their lives. But my former institution was a military college, and there we graduated over 100 students a year and put them into the service of the military, and that was a great change for their lives. So trade school, too, is a great opportunity for students, too, who want an education, but are realizing that the traditional 4-year, 2 or 3 math classes, 2 or 3 lab sciences, a foreign language elective, potential study abroad, and they're going, no, this is not what I want. I want to graduate and go into the workforce, but I want a learned skill. So at New England Tech, for example, we offer the trades in automotive, electrical, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, plumbing, probably a few that I'm not remembering right now on the spot. But these are great because it gives students the hands-on opportunities that they need and an education. So if your family is saying, like, we really want you to get a degree, and you're saying, but I don't really want a degree in history, and I'm locked on history degrees, I have one, don't use it every day, then a trade school may be the best opportunity for you. And it's, our programs are 18 months. So you start, typically for a student graduating from high school, the student would start in late September, early October, and 18 months later, not the following March, but the following March, they would graduate with an associate's degree and be ready to enter the trades, whether that's going into apprenticeship, whether that's going to the union, whether that's going right into a car dealership. And again, it's that hands-on experience that you're getting, where at our institution, for every hour you spend in the classroom, you spend 2 hours in the lab. So it's not, and that's, every student's different. I don't think that would have worked for me when I went. That would have been great for my brother had he not done a vocational program in high school. So I think it's really important for you to explore those areas and to know yourself. And just, again, have that honest conversation. Don't, moms and dads, don't push your kids to something that you don't think they can do but you really want them to do. And students, don't just follow that path because mom and dad did it or older brother or older sister did it. Certainly don't follow a boyfriend or girlfriend because you will be broken up by the end of the first semester. So do this for yourself. If they are going to be there for the rest of your life, they will be there at the end and at Christmas break, I promise you.
I'm kind of in my feelings about the history degree. I was a double major in history. No, but in all seriousness, in addition to what I've already noted about Massasoit Community College, I think something I wish I knew. I was a first-generation college attendee. I'm a first-generation American, and my mom was like, good for you, God bless, and take care, you figure it out. And so I ended up at a 4-year institution. I don't regret it. But as I got older and learned the system, I'm like, I wish I started at a community college. It would have really saved me some money. So there is the budget part, but I think community colleges don't get enough credit for the community that they can create for their students. So in addition to Massasoit having 60+ degrees, we have 20 student clubs and activities. We have a study abroad during spring break in our humanities department. And people don't think about those things when they think about community college. And I think those are also important things to consider. Not just the budget piece, but you can also develop community and be local if that's what you choose.
As a local private institution to Massasoit, I would just say as the transfer coordinator for Stonehill, some of our most ambitious and amazing students have come from Massasoit after doing 2 years and then coming to Stonehill. And they are some of our most mature students on campus because they have done 2 years of some serious soul searching of what do I want to do and what do I want to get out of my last 2 years at a 4-year institution. One of my absolute favorite students who was a tour guide and sat on panels for me came from Massasoit and he's now getting his PhD at Brandeis. So, these students who are making the choice to attend a 2-year college initially, they're coming to that 4-year institution with such vigor and excitement. And it's one of the reasons why the partnership that Stonehill and Massasoit has is so exciting because the students we are getting are coming in and they are changing the landscape and the energy of our 4-year students at Stonehill. So, go Massasoit. Again, it's a 4-year school. We all support each other on here, but there's a path for everyone. And so if 2-year college and then a 4-year school afterwards, or just a 2-year college, seems daunting because it's not what your peers are doing, but it feels right for you, follow that instinct, or at least look into it. Because we all want to serve our schools well and do our jobs, but at the end of the day, if we are not the school for you, we need you to pick the school that's right for you. So we're in full support of any decision of any college.
I think a lot of times students are uncertain what they want to do. So I think it's a great opportunity to begin at a 2-year program to figure that out. That being said, I know a lot of times we have students who will ask those questions, is it better or worse if I apply to a college going in undeclared, or should I declare a major? How's that going to look? They're trying to maybe sometimes strategize or understand the best approach. So I don't know if you guys can speak to that piece too.
I'm sorry. For UMass Amherst, it can be a little bit, let me just explain, basically. So it depends on the program. If you're looking at nursing, computer science, Eisenberg School of Management, though you cannot transfer into those programs. Especially for Eisenberg, we have 5-degree programs, a Bachelor's of Business Administration, so finance, accounting, marketing, operations management, and management are completely closed to internal transfers. That does not mean if you're coming from Massasoit and you apply to finance, that does not mean that that gate has closed. It just means that you are up for evaluation, okay, per the application process. Nursing, completely closed. So if you're coming, let's say, undecided for humanities and fine arts, that is a more lenient program. So it really just does depend on the school or college that you are applying to.
I appreciate your explanation. It's funny, I get asked this question. I always use UMass as the example. The other end of that, though, is that most schools will allow students to enroll still deciding on a major. I know officially it's undecided, but you're going to make a decision. It just hasn't happened yet, right? But in most cases, I think that's a really good idea, and I'm not alone in that. Nationally, I've seen numbers well into the 20% of all U.S. freshmen start college undecided on a major. I mean, that's significant, right? Bridgewater, historically, the past 5-6 years, it's been about 16%, which is lower than the national average. But if undecided was its own major, it would be our most popular major for incoming first-year students by double the next closest. Okay? So the reason why I think this is a good idea is that, honestly, you guys have an amazing curriculum here at Oliver Ames, but at any college or university where you enroll, we're going to offer degrees in things you've never heard of, right? Anthropology, economics. At Bridgewater, we have photonics and optical engineering. That literally sounds made up to me. But I'm told this engineer with laser beams and fiber optics, I'm going to take their word for it. But my point is that you enroll at a college and you undecided, and you can start picking classes. Most of us have counselors specifically trained to work with students still deciding on their major. And you're going to take courses that still count towards your degree, because we're all going to have some portion of our curriculum that are, general education. We'll have some flexibility as to what science you take, but you're going to have to take science and math and social studies and English and all that fun stuff, the background of a general college education, right? That's like a third of your credits. You can get those out of the way. Then you've got the second third, which are electives, just stuff you always wanted to take. But that also gives you the wiggle room for a double major, major minor, change your major. I'll get to that in a minute, right? And it's only the final third, generally, that's for your major. So you get to try before you buy and see what it is that you like. So give yourself that flexibility coming in the door, right? So if we check off all the other boxes in your college search criteria, go and enroll and figure it out as you go. And for those students who do know what it is you want to do with the rest of your life at 17, 18 years old, that's amazing. But again, give yourself that space and grace, right? Because I've seen numbers, brace yourself, parents, I've seen numbers as high as 50% of students in this generation, 50% change the major once, twice, or as many as 3 times before they graduate. I mean, I sound surprised, right? I changed my major in college. I shouldn't be surprised, okay? For the very reason I just explained. You get exposed to stuff you didn't know existed, okay? So give yourself that space and grace to learn and change and grow as you go. Don't get stuck on the major necessarily. And here's another secret, right? After your first job, nobody's going to care what your degree is in. Honestly. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're going to put an IV in my arm, you better have a nursing degree, right? You're going to build my building, you should be an engineer. But generally speaking, no one's going to care what your degree was in. They're only going to care, what have you done lately? I should say first, do you have the credential? Check. Then, what have you done lately? Okay? Because, I love this quote from Albert Einstein, who said that going to college, education is not the learning of many facts. It's training the mind to think. Training the mind to think. It's not about the first job. It's about every job after that. Okay? And college education is about gaining analytical skills, the critical thinking, the verbal and written communication skills, the cultural sensitivity and awareness, all those aspects. They're going to let you deal with whatever it is that life throws at you guys. Okay? Because there are students in this room, or back at home, or watching on TV, who, you guys are going to do jobs that we know of today in ways that we can't even imagine. Really. I mean, there was no such thing as online schooling 5 years ago. It's crazy, right? You think about how much the world's changed in our lifetime, parents, right? We're not that old, okay? And there are also students who are going to do jobs that we can't even conceive of today. Technology hasn't been invented. Think about it again. Our lifetime, cell phones, the internet. Thank you, Al Gore, right? Okay? And AI, thank you. It's finally an audience that gets that joke, okay? AI. You can only imagine the technology that's going to be invented over the course of our kids' 60 years careers. Okay? College education prepares you for that. Again, insider secret, you can do that with any major. Train your mind to think with any major. So ultimately, the major is important because hopefully it's something the students are curious enough about. They're going to want to get themselves out of bed, right, Sarah? Themselves out of bed on that cold and frosty morning because they're curious to hear what the professor's going to teach them that day. That's where a major is important. Everything else will take care of itself.
Everything Todd said is 100% right. I came in as one major, changed it 3 times, and I graduated on time. You're going to make it. Sample around. It's going to be fun. We have advisors up the wazoo for that at our school. One thing to keep in mind is that, and you'll notice is a theme for everything we say tonight, is every school is different. So at Stonehill, we do not admit based on major. We do not review a student based on the major they're applying for. We do not have different admissions policies or requirements for every major that we have. It's just admissibility to Stonehill. That is not the case at every school. That is not even the case at every private, small, liberal arts Catholic school in New England, right? Even though Stonehill and the many others are very similar. There are different ways that every school reviews students. At highly selective institutions, at public institutions, everyone's going to do it differently. So if you have questions or concerns about how that school reviews for a specific major you're interested in, it is always good policy to just ask them, shoot them a quick email. Hey, do you review differently based on the majors that a student is applying for? Some of the majors that we see often being different admissions practices would be nursing, engineering, architecture. Some of these programs are accredited by higher boards and have different requirements in their admissions practice. And so you need to follow up with those schools individually. Same thing will go for transfer. Like Yanela said, at UMass Amherst, there's different policies for different majors. So no matter where you're at in the process, always follow up with an admissions professional, just so that way you know what you're going towards and what your landscape of the application process will look like. And I will say that this is a very common practice too with SAT and ACT scores. So we got lots of options of score review. So optional, test-free, test required. Every school is going to be slightly different, even if they have a test optional policy, could have 5 schools that you're applying to that are test optional. Each one may be slightly different. So it's always good to follow up individually for major test policies, application deadlines. Some majors have certain application deadlines. Always great to just follow up individually with the school.
So Massasoit Community College has an open enrollment policy, except for specifically our allied health and nursing education. Very, very popular program. For the last 3 years, our nursing education program has yielded 100% of success in the NCLEX, which is the registered nurse exam, and our students have been able to go and work in the field should they be interested in nursing education. So for us, allied health and services are dental assistant, medical assistant, veterinarian tech, and our nursing education. I feel like I'm missing 2: respiratory technician and radiology. Right. So these are highly popular and desperate need in our workforce. So they're really significant, and pretty much saying that you could leave Massasoit in 2 years and be ready to be a registered nurse, which I think is really significant. A personal note, I would say again, first generation college attendee, first generation American. I needed to know what I was going to do when I walked into a college door, because there was nobody going to bail me out. Similar to Sarah, I'm an only child, and we were still too broke. It's like one kid at school. So it was really important that I knew. But similar to the story that Todd told, I went in determined to be an education and world history major. I had amazing internships during my college experience. I had amazing opportunities to do externships in my college experience. And I got my first classroom, and I said, what in the world am I doing here, right? So you can still get the grades, get the degree, and decide to change your mind. You are going to be okay. I need you all to leave with that and take a deep breath. You're going to be okay.
Similar to my colleague from Massasoit, I myself am a first-generation student. My parents immigrated from Ecuador when I was 7 years old. So I also felt like I had to pick a career, or like I didn't have a choice to go to college, just because that was the dream, that was the goal, that was the entire goal. Had I wished, bringing back to what Sarah said, boundaries, having those conversations early on, saying like, this is the program that I want to pursue, or maybe not. Maybe I don't have an idea of what I want to pursue, going towards or undecided. So definitely have those conversations early on. 10th graders, 11th graders, it's kind of time for you to turn to your mom, your dad, your guardian, and start kind of having those conversations.
One question we get quite often as students are getting ready to apply to college, especially schools that offer ED and EA, so that's early decision and early action, as well as regular decision. But a lot of times kids will be hesitating between whether they should be applying early decision or early action. Early decision is a binding agreement you're committing to that school. Early action, you're still applying early, but you're not committed. You still have time to make a decision. I was hoping maybe, especially with Bryant University where you have both those options, can you speak to that a little bit more? Because I know our kids do really struggle sometimes between ED and EA.
Yes, definitely. So with early decision, as I mentioned, it's a binding contract. So basically you're letting that school know that they're your top choice. And typically the chances of getting in as early or applying early decision are slightly higher simply because the application pool is smaller. Not many students apply early decision, so you don't have a lot of competition. As mentioned, the deadline is a little earlier, so for Bryant, I think in most schools it's November 1st. So you do have to have all those materials, your letter of recommendation, essay, all done by November 1st. And you do find out earlier, so you get your decision by December 1st. And then with early action, as mentioned, it's not a binding contract. Going back to early decision, you do have to withdraw your application from all other schools. So if you choose Bryant or whatever school has early decision, you're expected to withdraw your application from other institutions. And then with early action, the deadline, it's just a little bit earlier, not as soon as November 1st, but it's not a binding contract. You can still keep your applications open with other schools, and you get an earlier decision. So it's really just sitting down, and thinking with your guardians, your families, to see what the best option is for you. But again, just keeping in mind early decision, keeping that option for your top choice.
So Stonehill College also offers early decision and early action. Early decision is an awesome way to let a school know that they are your number one choice. I mean, there's really no more significant indicator of interest aside from that. And for students who are being recruited for a sport, whether D1 or D2, ED is typically alongside an NLI agreement. So for those students who are being recruited to play a sport, ED is typically on the table as an application deadline for that institution. One cautionary tale with early decision is that because you're withdrawing your applications from other institutions once you've been accepted to your ED school, you are waiving the opportunity to review other financial aid packages. So you're essentially saying, whatever this school gives me for financial aid as the ED school, we're going with it. So with ED, just if you decide to do that, please be confident that whatever comes back in that financial aid package is going to be all right for you and your family. I was an ED kid. Luckily, I got denied. Right? It happens. I'm still here. Because it was a Hail Mary for that top choice school. I dreamed of going to that school for 3 years. Thank God they denied me, because we would have never been able to afford it. And my parents knew I wasn't getting in, so they let me do it, which we still talk about. But we could have never afforded it. Whatever financial aid package was coming back, it was never going to work. So just proceed with a little bit of caution. If your student is saying, I want to apply ED to a school, really have those honest conversations with financial aid counselors, with admissions counselors at those institutions, and go in with both eyes open. Learn from me. Don't go into an ED agreement with blind faith, because it's hard to get out of them. Those agreements. It's not impossible, but it's something we really discourage, and there's a lot of trickle effect with it. So if you are interested in early decision, again, it is a fantastic way to demonstrate interest in your number one choice school, but proceed with caution if finances are going to be a main component of your enrollment decision for college.
I'd just like to add some quick advice on early action, which is the non-binding option, right? Which is a good option for students who have done pretty well in their high school career, maybe have some decent test scores, and you're relatively certain, you're gonna get in. You're putting your best face forward, okay? And early action is nuanced at different schools, right? So you want to find out how this works exactly. And I'll give you two extremes. So in some cases, you apply early action. If you are admissible, you're in. If you're not admissible, game over. You get your denial. At other institutions, certainly the case at Bridgewater is that if you apply early action and you meet the state standards, you're in. You get to find out earlier. In some cases before the holidays, which is really exciting. It's a nice position to be in going into the holidays. If you're not admissible based on the state standards, we don't deny you an early action. We put you aside. We give you another read sometime mid-January or later when we have a sense of what our incoming class is like and where we're going to use our special admits. So there's no penalty at Bridgewater to apply early action. You just get to know earlier, okay? And if we're not able to admit you, then we'll follow up and ask for test scores or second quarter grades, which is the other point I want to make in this context, is that early decision, early action, they sound exciting. They're not for everyone. Okay, so if your student is maybe struggled with online learning, came into high school a little rough, they're starting to do better, right? Or they had something else going on at home or academically, and they're making up for lost time sophomore year and junior year, and we see that trajectory, you might want to wait and apply a regular decision, right? Or holding admission or what have you. A little later on in the year so that we can see first quarter senior year grades or even second quarter senior year grades that build that story that is compelling enough for us to say, okay, because we're all going to take into consideration your entire high school transcript, but there's a story within that, okay? And if it's a comeback story, we all love a comeback story, right? So just choose which admission cycle you want to use based on what it is that you're presenting. You want to put your best self forward. And if that means you wait a little bit later into the admission cycle and you find out after everybody else, it's fine. As long as you're finding out good news and you land in the right place. Okay, so this is strategic decisions being made.
I feel like there's so many questions we could ask tonight, but I do want to leave time for questions. So what I'd like to do is just. Okay. I do want to wrap up with one final question for each of you panelists. Is there any other piece of advice that you think would be helpful for the audience to know tonight that we haven't discussed already?
I just want to reiterate what Sarah said. It is nobody's business where you are applying. Do not tell anybody. So I'm just gonna, that's like the biggest piece of advice. Don't tell yourself no. Don't let someone else tell you no. Let the professional tell you no.
That's the best advice. I think mine is more, keep your options open. And remember that you are going to be okay. And a shameless plug, April 6th, we have an open house. Come look at us. Rain or shine, we'll be there, 10 a.m. Hope to see you there too. And keep your options open.
So one thing I'll add that we didn't talk about really quickly is the essay. So just
Thank you.
really with that, my greatest advice is let us hear your voice. You know, when it comes time to read applications, we're reading hundreds and hundreds of applications, and we don't know the person unless we've met you personally. We don't know the person behind those few papers that we're looking at. Use the essay as an opportunity to tell us something more about you that we don't know just by looking at either your resume if you submitted it or your activities page. Tell us a story. But my greatest advice is don't just tell us a story. Don't just tell us why you like swimming or you play basketball. How has that changed your life? What impact has it had on your life? Just add a little twist to it if possible. So that's my greatest advice. Please reach out to us. Seek your guidance counselors for help with those essays as well.
I would just say have fun too. This process is fun. It can be fun. I know we've talked a lot about like cautionary tales and guidance and things we want you to know, but celebrate everything in this process. You visited your first school, get some ice cream. You submitted an essay, you submitted an app, celebrate, binge grace, whatever it is. Find little ways to find wins in this process, because once all the apps are in, it's out of your hands. There's nothing that you can't do anything else. And the news that may come back may not always be in your favor. So find little ways to celebrate. Make sure you have lunch after a visit to literally digest what just occurred. My favorite thing that families will ask after their tour is, can you recommend a good place for lunch? And I always send them to McGuire's. But, try and celebrate this process along the way, because it is a lot, and we recognize that, and we're here to support you through that. But sometimes I think celebrating is reserved for once you've decided on where you're going to college, but there's a whole marathon before that. So celebrate along the way. And then the other thing is start early. Common App opens August 1 of your senior year. August is usually a slower month for a lot of people. September, October, since things start to kick into gear with sports, activities, parties, stuff like that. And then that November 1 deadline is right around the corner. So try and pace yourself with this process over the summer when you have some time. Throw on something on TV and just like casually work on that Common App with basic info getting filled in. You'll be very happy with yourself. October you will like August you when you have gotten some of the boring stuff out of the way and you can just focus on, the critical details that need to be cleaned up right before you can submit.
I would just say, there's a lot of hype around this process, but and it's a big decision, deciding where it is you're going to go for college. It's not the last decision you're ever going to make in your life, okay? We like to think it's going to define your future. You define your future, okay? No matter, yeah, you absolutely do. You absolutely define your future. And no matter where you go, the most expensive, the biggest brand name or not, it's what you make of it. Because calculus is the same everywhere, okay? Okay? It's the same everywhere. So it's what you make of it. And like I said, it's not the last decision you make. You may get there, and your dream school turns into a nightmare. Because you change, they change, circumstances at home change. You can transfer. You can do it intentionally coming out of the community college. You can transfer from any four-year college or university. A lot of students do it. Again, nationally, see numbers as high as 30%. As high as 30%. My own son did it. Went to his dream school, left. Did fine, left. Went to another place. Is doing great. Okay? This threshold from senior year to freshman in college, it's not the defining moment in your life, and it's not the end of life as you knew it. Okay? So just keep this in perspective. It gets crazy, people. Been through it twice, okay? Going the third time. We got last tour of the battlefield coming up. My daughter's a junior. Okay, just trying to keep it in perspective. And I say keep it in perspective because, again, we've heard this from other colleagues. It bears repeating. You can change your college. You can't change your senior year. You get one senior year, which means one homecoming, one prom, one graduation. Parents start getting verklempt. It's important for you too. Don't lose sight in this process because the kids leaving at the end of senior year, going off to college, they come back and they don't come back the same person, and your relationship's not the same. So don't lose sight of those months that you have when they're still under your roof and you're still with them every day. Okay? Keep it in perspective.
So I would add to this that it's not always about the sizzle, it's about the steak. And oftentimes, especially as sophomores and juniors, you're going to start getting a lot of mail, you're going to start getting a lot of emails and text messages, and it's going to be a lot of glitz and glamour. And I think Todd said it to begin with, we only show you the best pictures of our buildings. Nobody has failed their calculus exam crying in the hallway, that we put in the brochure. So make sure you aren't choosing a school just because you've seen it on all these cars. Make sure you're not choosing a school because that's where mom and dad went. Make sure you're choosing a school for what you want and what serves you best. What are their job placement rates? That's one of my favorite questions to get asked at a college tour is, what are your job placement rates? Because that means that the student isn't just interested in what clubs and activities are going to be offered for 4 years of their life. They're interested in what happens the day I graduate. Yeah, I can see that you have this and you have that, but what happens when I'm done? What are the career preparation? You can use ChatGPT to write your resume, but are you writing your resume during your time at college? And the last thing I would say is, on top of just having fun, is every relationship is 100-100. This concept and this lie that we tell ourselves that marriage is 50-50, a relationship between parents and child is 50-50, give and take. No. It's 100-100. Children, you have to put 100% of your effort into helping choose your school. Parents, you need to help your kids 100% of the time. It's not, you do a little, they do a little. It's I need to help you get to where you need to go, and I as a child need to help myself get to where I need to go. So don't just expect somebody else to do it for you, either side of the equation. But work together, have fun, because it is an exciting time in your life that will change the future trajectory of where you head from here. And hopefully it's not back to your parents' basement playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Thank you for all that expertise. Questions? I know we had a question over in the front.
Yep.
My question is, you said that when you do a decision, that admission rate is not higher. Is that correct? Yes.
So,
Well, sometimes. What if you do a reaction?
so the question was just to clarify between early decision and early action in terms of acceptance rates.
Yes, so with early action, the same. Again, the application score is a little bit better as opposed to waiting for regular decision or early decision, where the competition is slightly higher. So yes, slightly greater chance.
Something to keep in mind, though, is that early action pools at most institutions tend to be the strongest applications we see, though, because those are students who don't need additional time in their academic journey to show growth. So, in my mind, a great early action candidate is someone who 9th through 11th grade Everything was fine. Academically, they did well. They're a good fit for the school that they're applying for. You know, each year they've challenged themselves a little bit more. They started Common App early when it opened, and they've put together a really nice professional application to college, and they've gotten all the materials in time because they requested their letters of recommendation over the summer instead of 2 days before the deadline. They've really put a lot of effort and preparation on the academic and the application side. That is typically what we would like to see at early action. So the reason that we do it, very general, I'm saying this very generally. The reason that at a lot of schools early action tends to be a higher acceptance rate is because the apps are stronger and they're more prepared for our institutions. So if you are sending in an application early action, but you are not an academic fit to that school, it doesn't matter if you're early action or regular, you're still not an academic fit to that school. So when you're considering applying early action, and if you're considering it only because, oh, there's a better chance of getting in, keep in mind the competition at early action tends to be the strongest that a school will see, because those are students who have really spent quite a long time preparing for that moment. I don't recommend applying to a school in a rushed fashion, early action, because we can tell when students have rushed, and we can tell when a student very clearly made a decision to apply early action because there was pressure from somewhere to apply early action and did not think, is this the right application deadline for me? You can also apply early action to some schools because it's a good fit there, and not at other schools. It's okay to mix and match deadlines based on where you fit in that school's academic profile. So keep that in mind when you ask the question of what's the admit rate for a specific deadline. Also ask the context of, what does that pool look like? Is it stronger? Is it weak? You know, you can ask us that. We will answer it to the best of our abilities.
I copied that. Yeah. I copied that. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Are the formulas, like for academic admissions, are those open to the public and publicly available, or are they like not supposed to know?
Yeah, so the question was about how colleges recalculate GPA. Is that my understanding? Yeah, and whether that's public or private information.
For public universities, it's public information. It's probably in your program of study here at Oliver Ames. It's wonderful transparency. So I can speak to how it works for the state university system. So there's 9 of us in Bridgewater, Salem, Mass Maritime, Mass College of Liberal Arts, and so forth. So we do a weighted grade point average. So we recalculate a 4.0 scale. Different in 2 ways. Typically, one, we don't include gym, health class, wood shop, that kind of stuff. The second way that it's different, it's weighted with honors getting half a grade level higher. AP, International Baccalaureate, and dual enrollment are all a full grade level higher. So theoretically, if a student's getting an A in an AP, you're getting a 5 on a 4.0 scale. So it does absolutely pay to challenge yourself appropriately, and it will be recognized in the GPA recalculation. So yeah, ours is pretty transparent.
For UMass, we keep that to ourselves. We do definitely keep that to ourselves. We do recalculate on a 4.0 rated scale. Of course, APs, honors, IBs will weigh a little higher.
So again, that's just why it's 1 of 15 community colleges. We're really transparent about it. We call it the multiple measures practice. So if you go to our website and search multiple measures, they will tell you each way they do GPAs and how they support all the high schools and the different ways.
At Stonehill, we do recalculate the GPA onto a 4.0 unweighted scale, and then we have our own method of reweighting. It is an internal process. Very honestly, it's not wildly helpful for families to know. I have discussed it with families on occasion, and it doesn't really provide any additional clarity because it's really a formula that for the admissions team we use to ensure that students are being reviewed fairly for the work that they've done. But from an applicant standpoint, I wouldn't say it's not helpful information in the review process. Something else you might be referring to as well is there previously was something called a sliding scale. This was more common when SATs were required in a lot of institutions, so there was like a combination of a GPA and an SAT, and depending on your score, there was a GPA that agreed with it. And if you met those requirements, in or out. Not as common anymore, just because SATs are less required, honestly. So now there's more of a move towards that recalculated GPA. Every school is going to be slightly different on how much they'll be able to share about their GPA recalculation, but there are schools that also do not recalculate the GPA, and they just take it from the transcript that you get. So there's all different variations.
Forgive me. The other comment about GPA is, again, it doesn't define you as an individual. It helps us in higher education better comprehend, can we serve you well? Is that fair to say, colleagues?
Yeah.
So it's something that, people talk about, your GPA, but I don't think it's articulated enough. The essay is important, right? It gets to tell a story so you know who you are. Massasoit does not require an essay, I'm saying in general. You get the story to say who you are and learn more about you as an individual. The GPA helps us know, are we a good fit for you? Just as much as are you a good fit for us?
This is also where curriculum becomes really important. So GPA is just one piece of this puzzle. The curriculum that GPA is within is also very important. So keep that in mind too as 10th and 11th graders are picking your junior and senior year classes. Think critically about, is there an area that I can challenge myself in the next year? So am I in honors English and I did well? Maybe I take dual enrollment or AP English the next year. Am I looking at a STEM institution? Am I looking at a business school? What's the minimum requirement they have for math? Or what's the minimum requirement they have for science? Am I meeting that? Or am I exceeding it? Am I over-prepared for those programs? So always keep in mind not only the grade, but the curriculum that school would expect you to have especially in those junior and senior years.
You bring up the possibility of challenge yourself senior year, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that you have AP English as a senior, or you have CE. There's no honors level. Am I wrong? And then how does that factor into any of your admissions policies? If the school doesn't offer something at a high school level, what is the student?
Yep, that's correct. It's AP Literature, or we have college prep English. There is no honors at the senior year level. But we also provide a school profile to colleges that also explains our grading system, our GPA system, and what classes we do offer, so they can see if something is not available to our students.
Yeah, I was going to say that based on the school profile. So if your school, doesn't offer those honors or AP courses, we look at that as well. So, we can't penalize a student if you didn't have that offering at your school.
The school profile is one of the first things I look at, just to get an understanding of, what is available to you, what resources do you have, just because not every school offers AP and honors courses.
Other questions? Well, I want to thank you all for being here tonight, and I want to thank our panelists for their expertise. We will be here for a few minutes longer if you did have any individual questions. Thank you for coming.